"Sir, you're not supposed to be in here." The voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a snapped wire sharp enough to stop Marcus Cole mid-step, mid-breath, mid-life. Papers hugged to his chest. He froze in the doorway he had just barged through, the words echoing in his skull before his eyes even registered the scene in front of him. And then he saw her. Elena Harlow, CEO of Harlow Innovations, the woman whose face appeared in magazines and investor conferences, standing alone in a wash of afternoon light, her blouse only half-buttoned, her jacket tossed across a chair. Her eyes widened, mirroring the same stunned disbelief pulsing in Marcus's chest. For a fraction of a second, the world shrank to a single beam of sunlight. A half-dressed CEO, and a black man who knew instantly bone deep. Life learned that this was the kind of mistake that could cost him everything. "Ma'am, oh God, I am so sorry," Marcus blurted, backing away so fast his heel scraped the carpet. The papers slipped from his arms, cascading across the floor like fallen leaves. His hands trembled as he dropped to gather them. "I thought this was the conference room. 18B. I swear." Elena's hand rose, not to accuse, but simply to steady the moment. "This is my private room," she said softly, the faintest flush at her collar, though her voice held firm. That firmness hit Marcus harder than a shout. Private room. Restricted. Off limits. The kind of space where a misunderstanding involving a man like him could turn into an accusation before truth ever had a chance to breathe. His heartbeat thundered. A black man making a mistake in a white room. Lord, this won't end well. He kept his gaze low, hands fumbling over scattered papers. "It won't happen again. I didn't mean to intrude. I didn't see anything. Well, I did. But, ma'am, I'm really trying to say I'm sorry." A flicker of amusement tugged at Elena's lips before she masked it with her usual cool composure. "Just knock next time, Mr. Cole. Marcus Cole. Mr. Cole," she repeated, as if committing it to memory. "Return to your meeting." Marcus nodded quickly, almost mechanically. Yes, absolutely. He gathered the last paper, stood, and backed out of the room as though stepping out of a crime scene. The door clicked shut behind him with soft finality. Inside his chest, everything tightened. In a building where he already felt like an outsider, where security badges were checked twice for people with skin like his, this single moment felt like a trap door opening beneath his feet. He hurried down the hall, breath uneven, guilt crawling up his throat even though he'd done nothing wrong except exist in the wrong place at the wrong second. He ducked into a break room and braced his palms against the counter. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. He lowered his head. They're going to twist this. They always twist it. He imagined Brad already sharpening his annoyance into accusations. Cole was creeping around the executive wing. Cole made the CEO uncomfortable. Cole doesn't belong upstairs. His stomach knotted. He thought of Layla, her small hand in his, the way she asked every night if he'd be home in time to read her a story. She depended on him, and he depended on this job. One mistake, just one, he thought, chest tightening, and they rewrite your whole character. He straightened slowly, swallowing the fear that tasted too familiar. He had lived a lifetime dodging assumptions, teachers assuming he was trouble, landlords assuming he couldn't pay, co-workers assuming he wasn't leadership material. And now, corporate America had delivered him its most dangerous assumption yet. He stepped out of the break room, forcing his breathing to even out. The hallway lights flickered once overhead, harmless to anyone else. But to Marcus, it felt like an omen. Something had shifted. Something had begun. He walked on, unaware that behind the closed door, Elena Harlow still stood in place, one hand resting over the buttons of her blouse, her mind replaying the moment with a confusion she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't used to being startled. She wasn't used to vulnerability. And she certainly wasn't used to feeling anything at all when a stranger spoke her name. The wrong door had opened. But sometimes the wrong door is the only one fate can use, and neither of them, not the single father who had learned to live carefully, nor the CEO who had learned never to be caught off guard, had any idea how deeply that one startled sentence would rearrange the rest of their lives. If you were in Marcus's shoes walking in on a moment that could cost you your job or your safety, how would you react? Would you apologize and walk away, or would you stand your ground? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like the episode if you felt Marcus's fear and courage in this moment. Marcus woke the next morning with the weight of yesterday pressing against his ribs like an invisible hand. The memory of Elena Harlow's startled eyes resurfaced the second he opened his own. For a long moment he lay still, staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling of his small West Atlanta apartment, listening to the quiet hum of the old air conditioning unit. Then a soft whisper drifted down the hallway. "Daddy, are you awake?" Layla, his anchor, his reminder that despite the chaos outside their door, this little world, just the two of them, had to stay standing. Marcus cleared his throat. "Yeah, baby, come in." Layla entered, curls wild from sleep, holding her stuffed bear by one ear. "You didn't read to me last night," she said gently, climbing onto the bed. Marcus exhaled, guilt flickering behind his tired eyes. "I know. I got home late. Work again?" "Work again," he said, tapping her nose. "But I'll make it up to you. Pancakes?" She brightened instantly, hopping off the bed and racing toward the kitchen. "Blueberry. And don't burn them this time." One time, he muttered to himself with a weak smile, rising to follow her. Morning routines in the Cole household were simple but sacred. While Layla set the table with mismatched plates, Marcus mixed pancake batter in a chipped bowl. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, this small patch of warmth in a world that didn't always welcome people like them. As he flipped the first pancake, Layla glanced up. "Did something bad happen at work?" He paused. Kids could sense things adults tried to hide. "Nothing bad," he lied softly. "Just something unexpected. Like when the ice cream truck came on a Tuesday?" "Exactly like that," he said. Though the truth was far from sweet, she accepted the answer, humming as she drew little suns on her napkin. But Marcus's stomach tightened. He hadn't checked his phone yet. He was afraid to. When he finally did, the screen lit up with a notification. Email from HR. His breath caught. His thumb hovered. But the message wasn't what he expected. It simply read, "Please report to the CEO's office at 9 a.m. Administration. No reprimand. No accusation. Just an instruction." Yet somehow, that felt worse. Marcus dressed carefully, choosing the least worn of his two work shirts. The bus ride downtown was quiet, filled with the familiar array of early morning faces, exhausted workers, students clutching backpacks, older men staring out the window as if cataloging the years they'd lived in this city. Atlanta had a rhythm Marcus loved, but it also carried scars he knew too well. Red-line neighborhoods, unequal schools, police sirens that didn't always mean safety. This city had raised him, and hurt him, and forced him to be twice as careful, twice as polite, and twice as patient as anyone else. When the bus rolled past Harlow Innovations, a sleek tower of glass and steel, Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The building always reminded him of a cathedral, too tall, too pristine, too holy for men like him. He stepped into the lobby, adjusting his ID badge. Just as he approached the security gate, the guard, a young man with a buzz cut, held up a hand. "Badge again," he said flatly. Marcus forced a polite nod and tapped the badge a second time. Others walked past unchecked. He didn't bother pointing it out. Some routines were older than the building itself. He made it to the elevator just as the doors were closing. Inside stood two junior managers chatting. They glanced at Marcus, then subtly angled their bodies away, lowering their voices. He knew that posture, the whispered side conversations, the assumption that he didn't belong in upper floors unless delivering documents. His chest tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. When the elevator finally chimed at the top floor, Marcus stepped out into the quiet corridor leading to the CEO's wing. Everything here felt expensive: soft carpeting, curated artwork, fresh-cut flowers at the reception desk. He cleared his throat. "Morning. "I'm here to see Miss Harlow." The receptionist nodded politely. "She's expecting you. Please go in." Expecting him. Those words made him even more nervous. As he walked toward the heavy office door, yesterday's memory replayed with sharp clarity. The light, the shock in Elena's eyes, the vulnerability she tried to mask. What would she say today? Would she be distant? Angry? Professional? Or worse, formal in the way people became before removing someone? Marcus knocked. "Come in," Elena's voice replied. He pushed open the door. Elena stood by her desk, fully composed today, hair pinned neatly, blouse immaculate, expression unreadably calm. Yet when she saw him, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe even concern? "Mr. Cole," she said, motioning to a seat. "Thank you for coming." Marcus sat carefully, back straight, palms resting on his knees. "Ma'am, before anything else, I just want to say I'm sorry for what happened. I take full responsibility." She raised a hand gently. "The same gesture as yesterday. Let's put that incident behind us. It was an unfortunate misunderstanding, nothing more." Marcus blinked. Nothing more? He had expected at least a warning. Instead, Elena opened a slim folder on her desk. "I called you here because I've been reviewing department reports, and something caught my attention." She slid a printed document toward him. It was his data optimization proposal, the one Brad had ignored, the one Marcus assumed had disappeared into a digital graveyard. "You wrote this," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, about 3 months ago." "And why?" Elena asked calmly. "Did it never reach my desk?" Marcus hesitated. The real answer, that his ideas were often dismissed before being read, felt risky to speak aloud. "I'm not sure, ma'am," he said carefully. "Maybe it wasn't the right time." Elena's gaze sharpened a degree, as if she could see the truth beneath his diplomacy. "Well, I read it, and it's excellent." Marcus's pulse jumped. "Thank you, ma'am. I want you to lead a small trial team to implement this model." He stared. The words didn't feel real. "Lead? A team?" "Yes." Her tone was matter-of-fact. "Your framework has the potential to save the company millions. I want to see what you can do with it." Marcus's throat tightened. Leadership, opportunity, visibility, all the things that came with risk for a man like him. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I appreciate the offer, I truly do. But I'm a single father. My schedule can be unpredictable. I don't want to commit to something I can't handle." Elena studied him for a long moment, not with impatience, but curiosity. "You're concerned about time," she said, "and raising a young daughter alone." Marcus swallowed. "Yes, and I don't want to become a target in the department. I already deal with—" He stopped himself. He didn't want to say it, didn't want to name the quiet prejudices lurking in hallways, but Elena seemed to hear the words even unsaid. Her voice softened slightly. "I understand more than you think." He doubted she truly did, but her tone wasn't condescending. It was thoughtful. "Take the day to consider," she said. "But know this. Talent deserves to be seen, Mr. Cole. Even when the world tries not to look." Her words landed deep heavier than she intended. Outside, as Marcus rode the elevator down, he let out a breath that trembled with uncertainty. This wasn't the morning he expected. This wasn't the path he planned, but something had begun, and he couldn't ignore the strange truth rising inside him. For the first time in a long while, someone in power had actually seen him, and that alone was enough to unsettle his entire world. Marcus spent the rest of the day trying and failing to steady the storm inside him. Elena Harlow's words replayed over and over, like a refrain he didn't know how to interpret. Talent deserves to be seen. He'd never heard anything like that from someone above mid-level management, let alone from the CEO herself. But with every hour that passed, the weight of her offer grew heavier. Visibility was a gift for some people. For others, It was a target. When Marcus finally returned home that evening, the sky had turned orange, Atlanta's version of a soft apology after a long day. Layla sat cross-legged on the living room floor, pencil in hand, coloring a picture of a family of 3 standing under a big sun. The third figure was vague, barely outlined. Marcus hesitated. "Who's that next to us?" She shrugged. "I don't know yet. Maybe someone who helps us." He felt something twist inside him. Hope, fear, maybe both. "Come eat dinner, baby," he said, pushing thoughts of the day aside. It's spaghetti night. They cooked together slowly, enjoying the small rituals that belonged only to them, the scrape of forks, the sound of water boiling, Layla humming her favorite tune. But Marcus's mind kept drifting. To the offer, to the risk, to the way Elena had looked at him, not like a problem, but like a possibility. Later that night, after Layla had brushed her teeth and crawled into bed, Marcus lay beside her to read. But midway through the story, she touched his cheek and whispered, "Daddy, your sad eyes are back." He blinked. "What makes you think my eyes are sad?" "They look like they're trying not to cry," she said in the honest way children did, without judgment. "Did something bad happen?" He considered lying, then chose a different path. "Something confusing happened. Are you scared?" He nodded slowly. "A little." Layla took his hand, her small fingers warm against his. "You always say courage isn't when you're not scared. Courage is when you do the big thing anyway." Marcus swallowed hard. She was repeating his own advice back to him. Advice he'd given her countless times: first day of school, first dentist visit, first time she rode her bike without training wheels. "Maybe," she whispered, "you should do the big thing." After she fell asleep, he sat in the dimly lit living room alone, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Thoughts churned like unsettled water. Leading a project meant stepping into the spotlight, where every move would be scrutinized by people who already doubted he belonged. But walking away meant proving them right. At dawn the next morning, he made his decision. By 8 a.m., he was standing outside Elena's office again, his breath steady in a way it hadn't been before. He knocked. "Come in," she called. Elena was dressed sharply today, reviewing files on her tablet. When she saw him, she set it down. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted subtly more alert. "Mr. Cole." "Ma'am," he began, clearing his throat. "I've thought about your offer. And I'd like to accept, but I need a few conditions." One of her brows arched slightly. "Conditions? Not unreasonable ones," Marcus added quickly. "I need flexibility for when my daughter needs me, and I need the authority to choose team members based on skill, not office politics." Elena's face remained controlled, but he caught the faint spark of surprise. "Maybe respect. Those conditions seem fair," she said. "Anything else?" Marcus hesitated. "I need to know. I'm being chosen because of my work, not because of yesterday." Elena held his gaze for a long, steady moment. "You're being chosen because you're the most qualified person for the job," she said quietly. "And because this company needs someone who sees what others overlook." Her voice softened. "Yesterday has nothing to do with today." The breath he hadn't realized he was holding finally released. "Then I'm ready," he said. "Good." She stood, walked to her desk, and handed him a slim project binder. "Your first meeting is at 10. You'll have access to full data archives and any personnel you request." Marcus nodded, electricity buzzing through his nerves. For a moment, neither of them moved. Elena studied him carefully, too carefully, as if trying to understand something she couldn't quite name. "Mr. Cole," she said finally, "this project will draw attention. Not all of it friendly. Are you prepared for that?" He thought of Layla's drawing, the empty outline of the third person, someone who helps us. "I'm prepared," he said. "Good." She returned to her seat. But just before he turned to leave, she added, "Marcus, I'm trusting you with something important. Don't shrink from it." The use of his first name startled him more than the offer itself. No one on the executive floor called him Marcus. No one even tried. "I won't," he said softly. "I know," Elena murmured. As he left the office, a sense of purpose pulsed through him, warm and foreign. But the moment the elevator doors opened to the lower floors, reality returned in the form of Brad Whitmore, arms crossed, leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting. Well, Brad said, his voice dripping with mock pleasant surprise. "Big man upstairs now, huh?" Marcus stiffened. "I'm leading a trial project." "A trial," Brad repeated, smirking. "Right. I'm sure that's why you were up there. Nothing to do with being in the wrong room yesterday?" Marcus locked his jaw. "It was a misunderstanding." "Sure it was," Brad said, stepping closer. "But misunderstandings have consequences, especially for people who don't quite fit the culture here." The words were soft. The threat beneath them was not. Marcus didn't flinch. "I earned this." "Let's hope you can keep it," Brad murmured before walking away. Marcus remained still, breathing slow, letting the sting burn and fade. He had expected resistance. He had expected jealousy. He had expected this. What he hadn't expected was the strange flicker of reassurance echoing through him. Elena Harlow's voice, calm and steady. "Talent deserves to be seen." He straightened. He had work to do. Today, he stepped into the arena, not because the world made space for him, but because he was finally ready to take it. Marcus arrived at the office the next morning before most of the building had even stirred awake. The sun was still low, brushing the Atlanta skyline with a soft amber glow, and for a moment, as he stepped off the bus, he allowed himself to breathe deeply. But the quiet didn't follow him inside. The moment he swiped his badge at the entrance on the second try, because the guard insisted on checking it again, his stomach tightened, as if bracing itself for the weight of a world he had chosen to step further into. Today was the first official day of the project, and with it came the responsibility he had spent years wanting and years fearing. On the 5th floor, the data department hummed with low conversation and the soft clatter of keyboards. When Marcus walked in, heads turned. Not in curiosity, no. This was something else, something sharper, magnified, as if everyone had heard he'd been spotted on the executive level, or worse, invented reasons for why. He kept his head down and walked toward his small desk, the same desk he'd had for 6 years, the one tucked into the corner by the supply cabinet. But before he could sit, a familiar voice broke the air. "Morning, Marcus." Mr. Hughes stood near the doorway, a coffee mug in one hand, a half-worn cardigan draped over his shoulders. His smile was small but real, the kind of smile Marcus rarely received on this floor. "Can I talk to you a minute?" Marcus nodded gratefully and followed him into the hallway. Mr. Hughes studied him carefully. "You look like a man with heavy steps." Marcus exhaled. "They put me in charge of the optimization trial." The older man raised his brows. "That's good news." "It is, but the higher you climb, the more people want to see you fall," Hughes finished. "Especially when you don't look like them." Marcus didn't respond. Hughes didn't need him to. "Now listen," Hughes continued, lowering his voice. "You earned this. Don't let them twist your story before you even start telling it." Marcus nodded. "I'll try." "Don't try," Hughes said gently. "Do." The words settled into him like warm stones. When Marcus returned to his desk, an email pinged. "Project launch meeting, 10 a.m., conference room 12A. Attendance: Marcus Cole, lead, department supervisors, analytics team." Something inside him clenched. Supervisors. That meant Brad. At 9:58, Marcus walked into 12A. He had expected tension, but the temperature in the room felt colder than air conditioning could explain. Brad sat near the head of the table, arms crossed, lips pressed in a smug line. Across the room, a few team members glanced Marcus up and down, whispering behind their mugs. He swallowed his nerves, set his folder on the table, and stood at the front. "Good morning," he began. "Thank you for being here. As you know, We're launching the data integration trial today, based on the model I proposed. One of the supervisors, a woman named Karen with rigid posture and a tone that always felt like a test, raised her hand. Remind us again how your proposal got escalated to the executive floor? It bypassed several review stages. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Miss Harlow reviewed it herself. Did she request it directly? Karen pressed. There it was, the insinuation. He didn't answer the way she wanted. She valued the potential of the model, Marcus replied simply. A soft chuckle drifted through the room from someone in the back. Brad leaned forward, tapping his pen. You'll have support as long as this trial remains productive. But remember, visibility can be a double-edged sword. Marcus knew what he meant. We'll be watching you. Waiting. He continued the presentation anyway, outlining steps, responsibilities, goals. His voice steadied as he spoke. He had to make them see the logic, not the man delivering it. When the meeting ended, several team members left without acknowledging him. Only one, a young analyst named Priya, paused. Your idea is solid, she whispered. Don't let them scare you. It was the first kindness he'd received all day. At noon, after a morning of back-to-back tasks, Marcus's phone buzzed. Unknown extension. He answered cautiously. Mr. Cole, Elena's voice. Smooth, controlled. Yet there was something new beneath it, something almost softer. Yes, ma'am. How is the first morning going? He hesitated. It's going. Meaning? Meaning, I'm working through it. Elena exhaled quietly, a sound he wouldn't have expected from her. If anyone attempts to obstruct your work, I want to know. He blinked. Ma'am, thank you. But I can handle it. Handling it is not the same as tolerating it, she said. I don't tolerate incompetence. That includes managerial incompetence. He froze. Did she know? Had she seen the tension? The way people looked at him? Focus on the work, she finished. I'll handle the rest. When the line clicked off, Marcus felt something strange, a mix of gratitude and dread. Gratitude that someone in power saw the unfairness. Dread because visibility, once given, could not be undone. That afternoon, Brad approached his desk, leaning against the divider like he owned the air around it. So, Brad said, voice oily. A call from the top floor. Must feel nice. It was about the project, Marcus replied. Of course it was, Brad said with a smirk. And not anything else. Marcus stiffened. What are you implying? Nothing, Brad said, hands raised in false innocence. Just hope you remember you're here to work, not socialize. There it was, the coded language that always meant more than it said. Marcus didn't respond. He simply turned back to his monitor, because survival sometimes meant choosing silence. But the silence burned. On the bus ride home, the reflection staring back at him in the window looked heavier than the one from the morning. At home, Layla dashed to the door. Daddy, did you do the big thing? He knelt to her level. I started it. She grinned. Then you're brave. He kissed her forehead, the weight in his chest easing just slightly. After dinner, after homework, after Layla was tucked beneath her blankets, Marcus finally sat alone in the quiet. His mind churned with the day's moments, the cold stares, the sharpened tone in Brad's voice, the way the room fell silent when he spoke. But then he remembered Hughes's quiet wisdom. Don't let them twist your story before you even start telling it. And Elena's steady voice. Talent deserves to be seen. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the thoughts settle like dust in a sunbeam. Today, he had stepped into the fire. Tomorrow, he would learn how to walk through it. Marcus arrived early again the next morning, the kind of early that made the office lights feel too bright and the hallways too empty. He needed the quiet, needed the stillness, before the building filled with voices that questioned his every step. The project binder felt heavier in his hand today, as though the weight of responsibility had grown overnight. Or maybe it wasn't the project weighing on him at all. Maybe it was the pressure of eyes that watched him not for what he did, but for what they expected him to fail at. At his desk, he reviewed the initial datasets, double-checking numbers, and cross-referencing old reports. The system logs showed inconsistencies, tiny mismatches, timestamps that didn't align. Most people wouldn't notice, but Marcus did. He always noticed the small fractures before they became system failures. He flagged them for follow-up, jotting notes into a file that would serve as the backbone of the trial. At 9:30, an email from Priya popped up. Need help accessing archive batch from last quarter. Permissions blocked? Marcus frowned. Permissions shouldn't be blocked. Not anymore. Not with the authority Elena had explicitly granted him. He stood and walked toward the IT access room, passing a cluster of coworkers whose conversation fell abruptly silent as he approached. One of them, a tall man named Connor, offered a tight, false smile. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning," Marcus replied, though the word felt thin in his throat. When he reached the access terminal, the administrator on duty barely glanced up. "Name? Marcus Cole. Project lead for the optimization trial. I need access to the full archival logs." The admin finally looked at him, eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Do you have authorization?" "Yes. It should already be in the system." The man typed something, raised a brow, and leaned back. "Your access request is flagged for supervisor approval." "By who?" The admin shrugged. "Says, per management." Marcus knew exactly what that meant. Brad. Always Brad. Always there. Always quiet. Always shifting something just out of his reach. "I'll handle it myself," Marcus said, and left before frustration could slip through his voice. Back at his desk, he drafted a precise, professional email, nothing emotional, nothing that could be twisted or weaponized. "Per project leadership responsibilities, I require full archive access. Please approve immediately." He sent it. Seconds later, Brad's response arrived. "We'll review your request when we determine it necessary. For now, focus on the datasets already assigned to you." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. He felt the familiar heat, a tightness in his chest that came from being simultaneously underestimated and feared. Priya walked over and set a coffee on his desk. "I saw the email," she whispered. "Don't let him get under your skin." "He's not under my skin," Marcus said, though his grip on the coffee cup suggested otherwise. "He's just doing what he does." Priya lowered her voice. "Brad doesn't like when people jump the invisible line around here. Especially not people who weren't supposed to make it past it." Marcus looked up. Priya didn't break eye contact. She understood more than most. The morning passed in long stretches of concentrated work. Marcus built preliminary models, compared efficiency maps, and constructed a diagnostic page that tracked redundancies the company had ignored for years. He lost himself in the numbers, the one place the world felt honest. Numbers didn't care about skin color or office politics. They simply revealed the truth. His truth was undeniable. The system was deeply flawed, and his proposal could fix it. At noon, Elena called. "Mr. Cole," she said, her tone even but more personal than before, as though speaking to someone she respected rather than someone reporting to her. "I reviewed your early output. It's impressive." "Thank you, ma'am. Any obstacles so far?" He hesitated. Reporting issues felt like complaining, and complaining was often read as weakness, a stereotype he couldn't afford. "Nothing I can't manage," he said. "Mr. Cole," Elena said calmly, "managing and tolerating are not the same. I asked a question." He exhaled slowly. "Archive access is being delayed." "By whom?" "Brad." Silence stretched, cool and sharp. Then, "I'll handle it." She hung up. 5 minutes later, another email landed in Marcus's inbox, short and icy. "Your access has been approved. Brad." He stared at it for a long moment, wondering what exact words Elena had used, wondering why it mattered to her at all, wondering why her voice, steady and controlled, lingered in his thoughts longer than it should. By afternoon, he was finally able to pull the archived logs. The inconsistencies were worse than he realized. Files were missing entire sequences. Authorization stamps were overwritten. There were moments where the activity trail simply vanished. He frowned deeply. This wasn't incompetence. This was interference. Someone had tampered with the datasets recently. Someone didn't want the optimization model to expose the cracks. Someone wanted the system to stay inefficient and chaotic, where errors could be blamed on convenient targets. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his forehead. There was a pattern here, but he couldn't see it yet. Not fully. At 5 p.m., as the office emptied, Mr. Hughes approached him. "Long day?" the older man asked. "Long month," Marcus admitted, though the month had only started. Hughes leaned on the back of the chair beside him. "You're uncovering things people don't want uncovered. I'm just doing my job." "Son," Hughes said softly, "in places like this, doing your job is the most dangerous thing you can do." Marcus absorbed that. Let it settle. "You think something's off?" "I think," Hughes said, lowering his voice, "that you should be careful. When people feel threatened, they don't confront you head-on. They chip away at the edges of your life. A bad report here, a complaint there, a door that shuts without warning." Marcus thought of his daughter, his job, his record, his reputation, and Elena's steady voice once again threaded through his thoughts. "Don't shrink from it." That night, as he and Layla ate reheated leftovers, she asked about his day again. "Did anyone say something mean?" "Why would you ask that?" "Because when kids are jealous at school, they say mean things, and grown-ups are just big kids with ties." Marcus let out a short laugh. "Some of them are," he admitted. "But I'm fine, baby." "Good," she said, stabbing her macaroni with purpose. "Because you're supposed to be brave." After Layla went to bed, Marcus sat by the living room window. Outside, the city lights blinked like tiny signals in the dark, each one a reminder that the world kept moving whether or not he was ready. But tonight, he felt something new stirring inside him. Not fear, not exhaustion, something steadier, determination. He was in the arena now, and someone, somewhere, didn't want him there. But he was no longer the man who shrank from opportunities. Not after making a promise to his daughter, not after hearing a CEO say the words no one ever said to him before. He would not shrink, not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again. Marcus woke the next morning with the distinct sensation that someone had placed an invisible hand at the center of his back, pressing him forward, urging him into a day he wasn't entirely sure he was ready for. The project was gaining momentum now, and with momentum came attention. The kind he had never asked for, and the kind that could swallow a man whole. Still, he arrived early, as he had done all week. Early was safe. Early was quiet. Early meant he could breathe before the game began. On his desk, a sealed envelope sat waiting for him. No name on it, no marking, just a beige envelope that looked out of place in a world that lived entirely on screens and cloud storage. Marcus opened it slowly. Inside was a printed memo, one he had never written, concerns regarding leadership performance. Marcus Cole. His stomach tightened. It listed fabricated complaints, missed deadlines, poor communication, unprofessional interactions. Marcus gripped the paper until it trembled. Whoever wrote this knew exactly what kind of allegations could get a black man removed without a fight. Footsteps approached. He folded the paper quickly, sliding it into his drawer just as Priya appeared beside him, clutching her tablet. "We have an issue," she whispered urgently. "With the logs? Worse, someone deleted an entire block of timestamps from 3 years ago. Gone, removed completely." Marcus felt the shift in the room, like the air itself had tilted. "That's not sloppiness," he said slowly. "That's deliberate." "Yes," Priya said. "And whoever did it had high-level clearance." Marcus's thoughts drifted immediately to Brad. But the logs went back too far. This felt bigger, older. Someone had been hiding something long before Marcus stepped into leadership. "Pull whatever fragments remain," he said. "Compare them to the original architecture drawings. Let's see what changed." As Priya hurried off, Marcus took a long breath. letting the weight settle. Every new discovery made the ground beneath him more unstable. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not after coming this far. At mid-morning, department heads filed into the weekly progress briefing. Marcus presented his findings, the inefficiencies, the corrected models, the missing timestamps. For a brief moment, the room felt still, contemplative. Then Brad cut through it. "These so-called missing logs," he said loudly, "could just be user error." Marcus steadied his voice. "They span 3 years. Across multiple systems." Brad leaned back, smirking. "Or maybe someone's just trying to exaggerate the problem to make themselves look important." Several people glanced away, uncomfortable. The implication was clear. Marcus was manufacturing issues, creating drama, playing victim. Marcus inhaled slowly. "The numbers don't lie." "But people do," Brad shot back. The air in the room thickened. Marcus felt the familiar burn accusation disguised as concern, prejudice disguised as professionalism. But before he could respond, the conference room door opened. Silence rippled outward like a shockwave. Elena Harlow entered. She rarely attended departmental meetings unless something mattered deeply. Brad straightened immediately, posture snapping to attention. Elena looked around the room, then at the projection screen. "Mr. Cole," she said, "continue." Marcus did. This time, no one interrupted. When he finished, Elena spoke calm, commanding, every syllable sharp enough to carve silence into obedience. "These inconsistencies," she said, gesturing at the data, "are significant. They affect operations and finances. They deserve investigation, not dismissal." Her gaze shifted cool, unwavering toward Brad. "Mr. Whitmore, is there a reason you're discouraging a deeper review?" Brad's throat bobbed. "Just considering all possibilities." "Good," Elena replied. "Consider this one. Mr. Cole is correct. And someone has been altering company records." The room froze. Brad's face paled just slightly. Elena continued, "I want full cooperation from every department. Anyone obstructing this process will answer directly to me." Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, air returning to his lungs. After the meeting, as everyone filtered out, Elena approached him. "Walk with me," she said. They moved down the executive hallway, the soft carpet cushioning their steps. "Whoever deleted those logs," she said quietly, "did so with intention and authority." "I know," Marcus replied. "We're not looking at incompetence. We're looking at concealment." "Agreed." She paused before a window overlooking the city. "You're handling the pressure well." "I'm trying." "Trying isn't what I see," she said. "What I see is a man standing firm while others push against him." Marcus wasn't sure how to respond to that. Praise felt dangerous, like a flame that could warm or burn. Elena continued, softer now. "You should know something. When I first became CEO, half the senior board refused to call me by my title. They said I was too young, too female, too untested. How did you handle it?" "By outworking them," she said, "and outlasting them." Marcus nodded slowly. "So that's what this is," he said. "A test. Part test," she replied. "Part threat, part opportunity." He met her eyes then, and for the first time, he saw something beyond authority recognition. Not sympathy, recognition. Two people from different worlds, both shaped by the quiet battles the world never acknowledged. "Be careful, Marcus," she said at last. "Someone does not want this truth uncovered." "I know." Elena stepped back toward her office. "But don't stop. Not yet." He watched her leave, something stirring in his chest that he didn't want to name. That evening, after returning home, making dinner, and helping Layla with her science project, Marcus sat alone on the couch reviewing the memo from the envelope. The false accusations, the attempt to discredit him before he got too close to the truth. But tonight, he wasn't afraid. Not the way he used to be. Something inside him had shifted, something stronger than fear, something steadier than anger. Determination had roots now, and those roots were holding fast. He looked toward Layla's bedroom door, where the glow of her nightlight painted a soft gold line on the carpet. He whispered, "I won't let them take this from us." Tomorrow, he would return to the logs, to the inconsistencies, to the people who wanted him gone. But he would also return to Elena's words, "Stand firm," and to the unspoken truth that was slowly taking shape between them, something neither of them fully understood yet, but both felt nonetheless. Tonight, Marcus rested. Tomorrow, the fight would begin in earnest. Marcus arrived at the office the next morning with a sensation he couldn't quite name, something between dread and clarity, like a man who had finally stepped far enough into the forest to realize there was no path back. The investigation wasn't official yet, but the truth had already begun pulling threads loose, exposing seams no one wanted touched. And today, something told him those seams would begin to tear. He reached his desk to find Priya waiting, eyes wide behind her glasses. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "you need to see this." She led him to her workstation, pulling up a set of files she'd recovered overnight. "These are the fragments from the erased logs," she said. "But look," she zoomed in. There were signatures, digital markers, authorization tags half corrupted but still legible. "Someone stamped over the logs manually," Priya said. "Not the whole file, just the authorization chain." Marcus studied the jagged bits of data, the faint ghost of a name. "But why erase only part?" he murmured. "Unless the rest of the logs needed to stay intact for the system to function." "Exactly," Priya whispered. "Whoever did this wasn't trying to hide the activity. They were hiding who approved it." A cold shiver traced Marcus's spine. "This goes higher than Brad. Much higher," she said. But before Marcus could analyze further, an email alert chimed. "Mandatory meeting, executive level, 10 a.m. All department leads required." "That's unusual," Priya said. "Very," Marcus replied. He headed to the elevator with a tightness in his chest. The executive floor was buzzing in a way he hadn't seen before, assistants moving quickly, advisors whispering, the air sharp with tension. And standing near the conference room doors was Elena. She wasn't dressed in her usual serene confidence today. Her expression was controlled, yes, but her gaze held a rare intensity like someone preparing for battle. When she saw Marcus, something in her posture softened. Only slightly, only for him. "Mr. Cole," she said quietly, "stay close to the facts. No speculation." "Is something happening?" he asked. "You'll see," she replied, and stepped inside. The room was filled with senior leadership people Marcus had only seen in passing, people whose decisions rippled across thousands of employees. He felt out of place, an uninvited guest at someone else's dinner table. Brad sat 2 seats down, arms folded, glaring at Marcus with a restrained panic that told him one thing. Brad knew this meeting wasn't about him, but it would take something from him all the same. Elena stood at the head of the table. "Thank you for coming on short notice," she said. "We have discovered irregularities in our long-term data logs." A low murmur spread through the room. Elena continued, "Mr. Cole's analysis revealed missing timestamps, manipulated authorization signatures, and overwritten activity trails spanning several years." An older director scoffed. "With respect, we've operated perfectly well for the last decade. Why trust the findings of a single analyst?" Elena cut him off without raising her voice. "Because he is the only one who caught it." Marcus felt heads swivel toward him, some skeptical, some surprised, some irritated. Brad raised a hand. "Before we escalate, perhaps Mr. Cole misinterpreted the data?" Elena didn't look at him. "Mr. Cole," she said, "would you like to explain?" Marcus inhaled slowly. He projected the logs, highlighting the missing sequences, the corrupted names, the altered records. "These gaps weren't accidental," he said. "They're deliberate edits, and the timestamps align with contract changes, budget reallocations, and system updates that were never documented properly. Someone manipulated operational flow for years." "Do you have proof of intent?" another executive challenged. Marcus hesitated. "Not yet. But the pattern is circumstantial, Brad interrupted. We shouldn't accuse leadership based on partial data. Elena finally turned her gaze on him. No one is accusing leadership. Her voice iced over. But we are acknowledging sabotage. The room fell silent. A beat later, the door opened, and an assistant stepped in, leaning toward Elena. She whispered something. Elena's jaw tightened. "Excuse me," she said, and stepped out. The door closed behind her. The room erupted with muttered theories. Marcus remained still, pulse ticking like a slow drumbeat. Minutes later, Elena returned, her expression unreadable, but her eyes found Marcus instantly, seeking something unspoken. She sat. "We have a second issue," she announced. "A formal complaint was filed anonymously this morning regarding Mr. Cole's conduct." Marcus's breath caught. Brad's eyes gleamed. "It alleges unprofessional behavior, inappropriate interactions, and," she paused, lips pressing thin, "that Mr. Cole is creating a hostile work environment." Marcus felt the accusation like a blow to the chest. Not because it was new, but because it was familiar. Because he knew how quickly such allegations stuck to men like him. Truth didn't matter. Perception did. Elena raised a document. "I have reviewed the complaint." She closed it with a soft thud. "It lacks evidence. All claims are unsubstantiated." Dismissed. Relief washed through Marcus so abruptly he nearly staggered, but then Elena continued. "However, the existence of this complaint at this exact moment indicates one thing. Someone is trying to discredit the employee who uncovered the data manipulation." Gasps rippled through the room. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Elena's voice dropped. "And I intend to find out who." The room fell silent, tension thick enough to choke on. The meeting ended with directives for departments to cooperate with a formal internal review. But as leaders dispersed, Brad approached Marcus. "Don't get too comfortable," he muttered. "A CEO's favor doesn't last long." Marcus stared at him, something inside him finally snapping, not with anger, but with clarity. "You're afraid," he said quietly. Brad scoffed, but his eyes flickered. "You should be," Marcus added, "because the truth doesn't need permission to come out." Brad opened his mouth, but no words came. Marcus walked away before he could recover. Outside the conference room, Elena was waiting. She approached him slowly, almost cautiously. "Are you all right?" she asked. Marcus exhaled. "I've been better. You handled yourself with integrity. You handled the room." Her eyes softened a fraction. "We handled it together." That word "together" lodged somewhere deep inside him. Neither of them acknowledged the shift, not yet, but something between them had changed, cemented, even under the pressure meant to break them apart. After work, when Marcus returned home, Layla ran into his arms, grounding him instantly. He held her for a long moment, feeling the weight of the day fall away. Later, after she slept, Marcus sat alone in the quiet living room, staring at the glow of the streetlight leaking through the blinds. Someone was trying to destroy him. Someone powerful. Someone hidden. But he wasn't alone. Not anymore. And for the first time, he felt an unfamiliar certainty settle in his chest like a steady flame. He would not be taken down quietly. Not by fabricated complaints. Not by erased logs. Not by the whispered prejudices that followed him since childhood. He was stepping deeper into the fire, and someone unexpected, was stepping into it with him. Tomorrow, the battle would sharpen. But tonight, Marcus allowed himself a breath, a long one. Because now he understood. The fight wasn't just about survival. It was about truth, and maybe, just maybe, about something more. Marcus arrived the next morning carrying an unease that clung to him like a second skin. Something in the building felt different. He sensed it the moment he stepped through the front doors. The security guard, who usually waved him through after scanning his badge twice, didn't even look up today. Instead, he stared at his monitor with a stiff, unnatural stillness. Marcus hesitated, then moved on. Elevators hummed as usual. Keyboards clattered on the lower floors. Hushed conversations drifted from cubicles. But underneath it all was a tension too controlled, too rehearsed, like a stage set before the actors arrive. When he reached his desk, Priya was already there, eyes wide, shoulders tense. "Marcus," she whispered, "someone accessed your project folder last night." His pulse jumped. "Who?" "I don't know." The ID trail was scrubbed, but they opened 3 subdirectories: your model draft, your anomaly list, and the timestamp reconstructions. All the sensitive files, all the pieces that pointed toward internal manipulation. Marcus felt the familiar tightness coil low in his chest. "Show me the access log." Priya opened it. A string of numbers appeared meaningless, stripped metadata. Whoever had done this knew exactly how to hide their tracks. He leaned closer. "What time?" 2:14 a.m. That was deliberate. Late enough that no one would question a random system ping. Early enough that night IT wouldn't notice. "Someone is watching every move we make," he murmured. "Someone with access." Priya nodded. "They're spooked." "You're too close." He didn't say it aloud, but the truth pressed heavily on him. If someone was willing to delete years of logs, they were willing to destroy much more. And he had just stepped into their spotlight. Before he could think further, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stop digging." Marcus stared at the screen, his breath freezing. Priya looked at him. "What is it?" He turned off the screen. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was confirmation. He was officially in danger. Not imagined danger, real danger. For the rest of the morning, Marcus worked with mechanical precision, each keystroke deliberate, each thought sharper than the last. He mapped timeline inconsistencies, piecing together scattered anomalies like building blocks of a truth someone was desperately trying to bury. But as he worked, a new kind of pressure pressed against him. Not external this time, but internal. The heaviness of walking into a fight that people like him were rarely allowed to win. At noon, Elena summoned him to her office. Her voice on the intercom wasn't as steady as usual. It held a tension she rarely revealed. When he entered her office, she stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes on the skyline. "Close the door," she said. He did. "We have a problem," she continued. 3 board members requested a formal review of your role on the project." His jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" "None that hold water," she said. "They claim the project was escalated improperly. That protocol wasn't followed." "But this isn't about protocol. This is about control." He felt anger rise, slow and deep. "They want me off the project." "Yes," she replied, "because you found something." Marcus swallowed. "And what do you want?" Elena turned from the window and looked at him. Really looked at him. "I want the truth. And I want you to keep going." "That may not be easy," he said quietly. "Someone broke into my files last night." Her expression hardened. "Show me." Marcus pulled up the altered access logs on her tablet. She studied them silently, her jaw tightening with each corrupted line. "This wasn't a low-level employee," she said. "Someone high up is involved. Someone with a great deal to lose." "I know." Elena set the tablet down, her voice lowered. "I won't let them push you out." "They're already trying," Marcus said. "Anonymous complaints, file tampering, threats." She stepped closer. "Threats." He hesitated. Her tone sharpened. "Marcus." He exhaled. "A message, telling me to stop digging." Elena's eyes darkened with something dangerous, not fear, but fury. "Forward it to me. And from now on, you don't walk to the parking lot alone." "I take the bus," he murmured. "Then I'll have someone escort you." He almost smiled at the absurdity, a CEO offering security for a data analyst. But there was no humor in her voice, no distance, no indifference, just resolve. "Elena," he said quietly, before remembering himself. "Miss Harlow." "Elena is fine," she interrupted. The correction hung between them, charged with something neither could name. He nodded slowly. "Elena, I'm not sure keeping me on this project is safe." "For who?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he knew too well. For him, for Layla, for the small life he had built, one careful step at a time. Elena read the truth in his silence. "Your daughter," she said gently. He closed his eyes. "If something happens to me," "Nothing," she said firmly, "will happen to you. You can't promise that." "No," she admitted, "but I can promise I won't let you face this alone." His breath caught, not from the danger, but from the honesty in her voice. No one had said something like that to him in years. Not since his wife passed. Not since the world taught him that black men survived by not needing help. Elena stepped back, breaking the emotional weight of the moment. "There's something else," she said. "The board wants a freeze on your project until they meet next week." Marcus felt the floor drop beneath him. "A freeze?" I refused. He stared at her. Long, quiet, uncertain. "Why?" he finally whispered. Elena's answer was soft but unwavering. "Because you're right, and because someone is trying too hard to stop you." The silence that followed thickened, not awkward, but heavy with clarity. Trust, danger, connection, all woven into a single moment neither of them could step away from. Marcus finally spoke. "Then I'll keep going." "Good," she said. "But be careful." When Marcus left her office, the hallway felt longer than usual. The building sounds sharper, every whisper heavier. Someone was watching him. He could feel it in the prickle along his neck, the hush that spread as he passed. But beneath the fear was something stronger resolve. As he rode the bus home that evening, rain streaking the window beside him, Marcus replayed Elena's words. "I won't let you face this alone." Those words rooted themselves somewhere deep inside him, a place that had felt hollow for too long. When he reached home, Layla jumped into his arms, grounding him instantly. He held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair, the warmth of her small arms around his neck. For a moment, the world felt clear again, safe again. But only for a moment, because when he closed the door behind them, he noticed something he hadn't expected. A folded note slipped under the door. He froze, picked it up, unfolded it. One sentence, written in block letters, "This is your final warning." His chest tightened. The air seemed to thicken. The danger was no longer at work. It was here, at his home, where Layla slept, where they were supposed to be safe. For a long time, Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, with a steadiness he didn't feel, he whispered to himself, "This ends now." Because fear had crossed the threshold of his home, and that was the line he would never allow anyone to cross again. Marcus didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. The threat note lay on the kitchen counter, a small, silent thing that felt heavier than anything he had ever held. He sat at the table long after Layla had drifted off to sleep, staring at the words written in block letters as if memorizing the handwriting might save him. "This is your final warning." He had been threatened before in his life's subtle ways, quiet ways, sideways looks and coded phrases, but never like this. Never a note slipped under his door. Never something that crossed the fragile boundary between his work life and the only space where he felt safe with his daughter. Fear gnawed at him, but beneath it, something else grew, something solid, unmoving, forged from years of surviving, a quiet, unyielding resolve. By morning, he had made a decision, not a loud decision, not the kind that announces itself, just a steady one. He would not back down. He would not let this shadow force scare him into silence. Layla came into the kitchen rubbing her eyes, her socks uneven, her curls wild. "Daddy, you look tired," she murmured. Marcus forced a smile. "Just thinking too much." "About work?" He hesitated. "Yeah, something like that." She hugged him tightly. "Then don't think. Just eat breakfast." He almost laughed, almost. But the truth was, even as he buttered toast and poured her cereal, his mind was already on the next steps. At the bus stop, Layla squeezed his hand. "Will you be brave today?" Marcus knelt to her height. "Yes," he said, brushing a curl from her forehead. "And you be brave too." I always am, she said proudly, and hopped onto her school bus. When Marcus reached Harlow Innovations, he wasn't surprised to see 2 security officers standing near the entrance, not checking badges, watching him. One of them nodded stiffly, the kind of nod that wasn't greeting but acknowledgement. He ignored them and moved inside. Priya intercepted him before he reached his desk. "Marcus," she said hurriedly, "you need to see this now." She led him to a secluded corner of the office and pulled up the server logs. Someone changed the access architecture at 4 a.m. Changed how? They added a new override key, she said. It's a master key. It can bypass every lock in the system, including the project data. Marcus stared at the screen. Who has that level of authority? Priya exhaled shakily. Only upper executive officers. A chill cut through him. Someone close to the top was orchestrating the sabotage. Someone powerful enough to rewrite the entire system at dawn and erase their fingerprints minutes later. Marcus scanned the metadata. A pattern glowed faintly, a repeated sequence buried deep in the logs. He pointed. There. That signature fragment. Have you seen it before? Priya zoomed in. Her eyes widened. I saw something like that in the old financial approval chains. 3 years ago, but those were locked under. She stopped. Under what? Marcus asked. Under the previous CFO. Marcus froze. The previous CFO, Douglas Trent, left the company abruptly 2 years earlier with a vague explanation about career changes. Rumor had said otherwise, that he had clashed with leadership, that funds had gone missing, that some irregularities had been found but quickly buried. If this signature matches his token, Marcus whispered, he could still be accessing the system, or someone is using his old credentials. Priya finished the thought. They exchanged a look, unspoken yet clear. Someone had resurrected a ghost from Harlow Innovations' past to cover new crimes. Suddenly, Marcus's phone buzzed. Elena. He stepped aside to answer. Yes? Her voice came low, controlled, but edged with tension. You're being monitored. His breath caught. By who? Someone on the board, she said. I don't know who yet, but they requested logs of all your system activity. And, she hesitated. They asked for copies of your emails from the past month. Marcus exhaled slowly. They're building a case. Trying to, she corrected, but they won't succeed. He rubbed his forehead. Elena, someone left a threat at my home. Silence. Then her voice, sharp as a snapped wire. What? A note, telling me to stop. Her breath hitched softly, something he'd never heard from her before. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I wasn't sure what you could do. Marcus, she said, lowering her voice, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whoever is behind this isn't just hiding numbers. They're desperate. Desperate people escalate. I know. No, she said firmly. You don't. A pause. I'm assigning 2 security officers to watch the building entrances. And tonight, you and your daughter will be driven home. Elena, that's too much. It's not enough, she said. Not anymore. Something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic yet, not openly, but heavy with concern, connection, and the pull of 2 lives crossing in ways neither had expected. After the call, Marcus returned to his desk, but before he could sit, Brad appeared behind him, hands in pockets, pretending casualness he didn't feel. Rough morning? He asked. Marcus didn't bother turning. What do you want? Just checking in, Brad said. You seem tense. Marcus faced him slowly. Someone threatened me. Brad blinked. A flicker? Surprise? Guilt? Crossed his face, too fast to decipher. Threatened? Really? You sound disappointed you didn't get to do it first. Brad's jaw tightened. Watch yourself, Cole. I'm done watching, Marcus said. Now I'm looking. Brad paled slightly and retreated without another word. Priya appeared again, clutching a tablet. Marcus, I found something else. She handed it to him. It showed the old CFO's authorization token embedded in a chain used last week. This wasn't leftover code, she said. Someone copied his token manually, meaning the person behind this is active right now, Marcus said. Not a ghost. Someone alive. Someone in this building. The realization clicked hard. Everything came into focus. The manufactured complaint, the midnight log tampering, the anonymous note at his door. Someone wasn't just covering old crimes. They were building a system of corruption, and Marcus had become the obstacle. At 6 p.m., as Elena insisted, a company driver picked Marcus and Layla up. The ride was quiet, too quiet. Layla fell asleep against his shoulder. He stared out the window, city lights blurring past, the weight of danger pressing against the glass like a shadow trying to slip inside. When they reached home, the driver scanned the hallway before letting them out. No new notes, no signs of intrusion. But Marcus felt watched, even inside his own walls. That night, after Layla was asleep, Marcus sat on the floor with his laptop, files glowing on the screen. He replayed the signature fragment again and again until the pattern resolved into something undeniable. Someone with CFO-level clearance passed or stolen was altering Harlow's financial history. Someone who feared what Marcus had already uncovered. Someone who believed threats would silence him. But they were wrong. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. He was angry, and anger, for a man who had spent his life being quiet to survive, was a dangerous awakening. He whispered into the stillness, "Whoever you are, I'm coming." Because he understood now. He wasn't the one being hunted. He was the one uncovering the truth. And truth, once awakened, did not go back to sleep. Marcus woke before sunrise, heart pounding with a restless clarity. The discoveries of the last 48 hours circled his mind like storm clouds, missing logs, resurrected credentials, the threat at his door. He hadn't slept much, but exhaustion didn't matter anymore. A line had been crossed. Someone had brought danger to his home, to Layla, and Marcus felt a heat in his chest that made fear feel small. Today, something had to break, and it wouldn't be him. He dropped Layla off at school with an extra kiss on the forehead and watched her run inside until she disappeared behind the brick walls. Only then did he allow the tension to return. At Harlow Innovations, the atmosphere had changed again. The lobby was too quiet, too still. Employees spoke in hushed voices. Eyes followed Marcus in a way that was almost cautious, not mocking anymore, not dismissive, but alert, as if they sensed the ground shifting and weren't sure whose side the floor would crumble beneath first. When he reached his desk, he found Priya waiting with her tablet clutched to her chest. "Marcus," she whispered, "I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the logs, and I found something." She opened her tablet. "The token signature we saw? It appears again, last night, at 1:37 a.m. Marcus stared at the screen, pulse quickening. "On what file?" "Not a file," she said. "A device." Priya pulled up a map of the office network, highlighting a single node blinking red. This device accessed the override last night. Marcus squinted. It was a workstation number. He recognized it immediately. "That's the CFO's old office," Priya nodded. "It's been empty for 2 years. But last night, someone used it." A chill crawled up Marcus's spine. "We need to see inside that office." "It's locked," Priya said. "Only top leadership can." Marcus didn't wait for her to finish. He headed straight for the elevator. When he reached the executive floor, he expected resistance. Someone blocking him, someone demanding answers. But no one stopped him. He knocked on Elena's door. "Come in," her voice called. She looked up from her desk the moment he entered, and her expression softened with concern. "Marcus, I was just about to call you. We found something," he said. In the old CFO's office, Elena stood so quickly that her chair rolled back a few inches. "Show me." As he explained the midnight access and Priya's discovery, Elena's jaw tightened. "That office was sealed when Trent left," she said. "No one should be inside it. No one should even have the key." And yet someone was, Marcus said, last night. For a moment, Elena looked toward the hallway, as if calculating the risks. Then she grabbed her blazer. Let's go. They walked side by side down the executive corridor. The old CFO's office sat at the very end, the only door that didn't match the others. The frosted window still bore faint lettering. Douglas Trent, Chief Financial Officer. Elena pulled out her key card, inserted it into the reader. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. It's been disabled, she murmured. Marcus swallowed. Someone doesn't want it opened. Elena tapped a different key sequence, one he'd never seen before, a hidden override for emergency access. This time, the lock clicked. Slowly, carefully, she pushed the door open. The lights flickered on. Dust floated through the stale air. The office looked untouched, desk empty, shelves bare, chairs neatly aligned. But there was something wrong. Marcus stepped toward the desk. Elena followed, scanning every surface. And then she saw it. A laptop, black, slim, new, not covered in dust, not part of the old office. It was placed deliberately at the center of the desk, as if waiting for someone. This shouldn't be here, Elena whispered. Marcus felt a tightening in his gut. It's a plant, or a trap, Elena said. Marcus pressed the power button. The laptop hummed awake. No password prompt, no encryption. It opened immediately to a folder titled Archive Gateway. Inside were dozens of files, financial approvals, overwritten logs, buried contracts, everything he had suspected, everything he had been searching for. And then he saw the final file, Project Shadow Stream, confidential. He clicked it. A document opened, and what he saw made his breath stop. Money trails, manipulated budgets, unauthorized transfers, a covert funneling of company funds over several years, all tied to a single department. The Board Oversight Committee, the very people demanding Marcus be removed. They're stealing from the company, he whispered. Millions. Elena scanned the screen, her expression hardening into something fierce. This is corruption, she said. Deep corruption, and if the board is involved, they'll destroy anyone who threatens them, Marcus finished. The implication hung heavy in the stale air. Then Elena pointed at the screen. Look, a signature line, one they hadn't seen before. Authorization tag, A. Whitmore. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Whitmore, Brad's last name. Elena's eyes burned. His father. Marcus stepped back, mind racing. Brad tried to stop the investigation because he wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting his family. And his father was the one approving the illegal transfers. Elena said, "This goes deeper than we thought." Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hall, slow, deliberate. Elena froze. Marcus instinctively closed the laptop. The steps stopped outside the door. A shadow moved under the crack, then a voice, calm, cold, familiar. "Miss Harlow," the voice said, "I've been looking for you." Elena's eyes widened. Marcus recognized the voice instantly. Board member Adrian Whitmore, Brad's father, the mastermind behind the entire scheme. Elena motioned to Marcus silently. "Stay quiet, don't move." But Whitmore tried the handle. It rattled, locked again. "I know you're in there," Whitmore said, voice low. "And we need to talk." Marcus felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. If Whitmore entered that office now, they were done. He would see the laptop. He would know what they had found. "We need to get out," Marcus whispered. Elena's eyes darted to the emergency exit door in the corner disguised in the wall paneling. She nodded. They moved quickly, silently. Elena pressed her palm against the panel. The exit clicked open. Behind them, Whitmore jiggled the handle harder. "Open the door, Miss Harlow." They slipped into the emergency stairwell just as the CFO's office lock beeped, overridden from the outside. Elena quietly closed the exit door behind them. They stood in the stairwell's dim light, breathing hard, listening as Whitmore entered the office they had just escaped. Marcus whispered. He knows. Elena shook her head. Not yet, but he will. Marcus looked at her, at the steel in her eyes, the defiance, the spark of something shared between them now. What do we do? She swallowed, then answered with quiet fire. We bring him down. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a hope. It was a promise, and for the first time, Marcus felt the storm around him begin to shift, not against him, but with him. The emergency stairwell was colder than Marcus expected, the concrete walls swallowing sound as he and Elena descended the steps with careful, controlled movements. Neither spoke at first. They were too aware of the danger on the other side of the door. Behind them, muffled but unmistakable, they heard Whitmore pacing in the CFO's office, opening drawers, shifting objects, searching for something, searching for them. Marcus kept his voice low. What if he finds the laptop? Elena shook her head. He won't know what was opened. And he can't prove we were in there. He doesn't need proof to come after me, Marcus whispered. Elena paused mid-step, turning toward him, her eyes fierce in the dim stairwell light. He won't touch you. I won't allow it. The words struck him harder than the threat itself. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Two people who had entered the stairwell as CEO and analyst, but were now something far more intertwined. They reached the lower level. Elena swiped her emergency access card, and the door opened into a quiet administrative corridor far from the executive wing, far from Whitmore. We need a safe place to review the files, she said. Somewhere no one expects us. Marcus nodded, thinking fast. There's an unused testing lab 2 floors down. It's off-network. The Wi-Fi is isolated. Perfect, Elena murmured. As they walked, Marcus couldn't help noticing how she moved calm, purposeful, as if she had been preparing for this moment long before today. Maybe she had. Maybe leadership had taught her that navigating power meant constantly expecting betrayal, constantly standing ready. When they reached the lab, Marcus keyed in the access code. The lights flickered on, revealing a narrow room full of outdated equipment. It felt forgotten. Safe. Elena closed the door behind them. Marcus opened the laptop again. The files from Project Shadowstream glowed on the screen, illuminating their faces. Look at this, he said, scrolling through the approval trails. These transfers appear yearly different departments, same destination account. And the amounts increase every year, Elena added, her eyes scanning rapidly. Someone has been funneling money out of Harlow Innovations for a long time. Marcus clicked to the last page. Here, a final signature. A single name. It wasn't Whitmore's. It wasn't the former CFO's. It was someone they never expected. Elena inhaled sharply. Board Chairwoman Margaret Hamilton. Marcus's heart dropped. Hamilton was a public face of integrity, a woman praised for her decades of leadership, always touting transparency and community responsibility. She was the one who welcomed Elena to the company 10 years ago, the one who advocated for diversity on the board, the moral anchor of Harlow Innovations. This doesn't make sense, Elena whispered. She mentored me. She pushed for my promotion. Maybe that's how she hid behind you, Marcus said quietly. Elena braced herself against the desk, the betrayal hitting deeper than any professional blow. He watched her struggle to steady her breath. Elena, Marcus said softly, we don't know how involved she is. Maybe, no, Elena cut in, eyes sharp with pain. Those signatures are hers, and she authorized every step. Marcus wanted to say something, anything to soften the blow, but the truth hung heavy between them. Why now? Elena finally asked. Why escalate now? Why threaten you? Because my model pulls the missing funds into the open, Marcus said. They can't let it run. And they can't let you run it, Elena murmured. The silence that followed said everything else. Then Marcus noticed something on the corner of the screen. A date. A transfer that occurred only 4 months ago. This is recent, he said. This is active. They're still doing it. Elena straightened slowly, resolve hardening in her expression. Then we stop them. Marcus looked at her. wondering how she wasn't shaking. He felt adrenaline, fear, anger. But Elena? She looked carved from steel. He admired that more than he dared admit. "How do you want to proceed?" he asked. "First," she said, "we duplicate everything. Twice." They spent the next hour backing up all files to a secure offline drive and an encrypted cloud account Elena created under a private alias. Every click felt like a countdown, a race against the moment Whitmore realized the laptop had been touched. When the final upload completed, Marcus closed the laptop and unplugged it. "What now?" Elena took a breath. "Now we bring this to someone who can help us move without alerting the board." "Who?" "An outside auditor. Someone the board doesn't control." Marcus frowned. "That could expose you too." "It will," she said simply. "But I won't allow criminals to run this company. Not while I sit in that office." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something like respect, but deeper. "You're risking everything," he whispered. She met his eyes. "So are you." The moment held, long enough for both of them to feel it, long enough to acknowledge silently that this fight had bound them together in ways neither expected. But before either could speak, Elena's phone buzzed sharply. She checked it. The color drained from her face. Marcus's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "A board meeting," she said. "Unscheduled. 15 minutes from now." "They know," Marcus said. "Or suspect." Elena looked toward the door, jaw tightening. "They're setting the stage. They want to corner me before I corner them." "You can't go in alone," Marcus said. "I have to," she replied. "If I don't show, they'll use it against me." Marcus stepped closer. "Elena, they will come after you like they're coming after me." She looked at him then, really looked, her eyes softening despite the fear tightening around them. "Marcus, listen to me. Whatever happens in that room, you keep those files safe. You don't stop. You keep digging. You protect yourself. Protect Layla." He swallowed, the weight of her words sinking deep. "What about you?" A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I'll handle them." "No," he whispered. "You shouldn't have to handle this alone." "Neither should you," she said softly. "But here we are." The silence between them simmered with everything they couldn't say. She placed her hand briefly on his arm, a gesture of trust, connection, maybe even something growing quietly beneath the chaos. Then she stepped back, composed herself, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned once more. "Marcus, whatever they try in that meeting, don't lose faith in what we found. Truth is on our side." He nodded. "I'm not backing down." "Good," she whispered. "Neither am I." And then she was gone. Marcus stood alone in the dim lab, listening to the echo of the door closing behind her. He felt fear, he felt determination, and, unexpectedly, he felt something else, something fierce and protective rising in him as Elena walked into a room full of people who wanted to destroy them both. He whispered into the still air, "Come back safe." Because the fight wasn't just about corruption anymore. It was about her. It was about them. And the storm was just beginning. Elena walked into the boardroom with the steady composure of a woman preparing for a storm she already knew she could not outmaneuver but would face anyway. The long mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lights, and the air inside felt colder than the hallway she left behind. Every board member was already seated. Whitmore sat closest to the head of the table, posture straight, eyes sharpened with quiet hostility. And at the very end, board chairwoman Margaret Hamilton watched Elena with an unreadable expression, one that suddenly meant something entirely different now that Marcus had decoded her signatures. Elena took her seat. "This meeting wasn't scheduled," she said evenly. "That concerns me." "It concerns us as well," Hamilton replied. "Which is why we called it." Whitmore leaned forward. "We need to discuss your conduct, Miss Harlow." Elena did not flinch. "My conduct?" "Yes," he said smoothly. "We've received reports that you are interfering with active internal audits, encouraging unauthorized investigations, and empowering employees far outside their roles." A quiet rage curled inside Elena, but her voice remained steady. "If you're referring to Mr. Cole, we are," Whitmore interrupted sharply. "Your favoritism has compromised operational objectivity." Elena clasped her hands in front of her. "Is that what this is about? My decision to support an analyst who discovered inconsistencies you failed to notice for years?" Hamilton's gaze sharpened ever so slightly. "Elena," she said calmly, "we value your leadership, but there are limits to any leader's authority, especially when that leader starts digging in places she shouldn't," Whitmore added. Elena held his gaze. "You're afraid?" Whitmore blinked. "Of what?" "The truth." A faint ripple of discomfort moved through the room. Hamilton's voice tightened. "Enough." Elena leaned forward, choosing her words carefully. "Before we continue, I want to state clearly, I am aware of the financial discrepancies spanning several years. I am aware that someone with high-level access manipulated company records, and I am aware that these actions were authorized at the board level." The room froze. Not a breath. Not a twitch. Whitmore's jaw clenched. "You're making serious accusations." "I'm not accusing," Elena said. "I'm stating facts, supported by digital evidence." Hamilton's composed facade flickered fear, anger, something brittle underneath. "What evidence?" "Copies of system logs, hidden accounts, transfer approvals, including your signature, Margaret." A sharp gasp escaped one of the board members. Whitmore turned slowly toward Hamilton. "I told you this would happen," he hissed. Hamilton's mask cracked. "You incompetent fool," she snapped back quietly. In that moment, the room shifted. The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was alive. Elena stood. "I have forwarded the files to an external auditor. If anything happens to Mr. Cole or myself, they will be released publicly." Hamilton slammed her palm on the table. "You've overstepped." "No," Elena said softly. "You have." For the first time, the fear in Hamilton's eyes wasn't about being caught. It was about losing power she had hoarded for decades. Whitmore tried to regain control. "This is nonsense. You can't threaten the board." "I'm not threatening," Elena replied. "I'm protecting the company you have been stealing from." The room descended into chaos, voices rising, arguments erupting, Hamilton and Whitmore turning on each other with accusations sharp enough to cut glass. Elena waited, silent, steady, then she walked out. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for adjournment. She left them to their unraveling. The hallway outside felt warmer, but her heartbeat hadn't slowed. She needed to find Marcus. She needed to make sure he was safe. Meanwhile, Marcus was still in the hidden lab, pacing as the minutes crawled by. Every second Elena stayed in that meeting felt like a threat tightening around her throat. When the door finally opened and Elena stepped inside, Marcus exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. She looked exhausted but unbroken, as if she had just walked through fire and somehow returned with her dignity intact. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. Elena nodded slowly. "It's done." "What happened?" She let out a long, trembling breath. "I confronted them, all of them, with everything we found." Marcus's pulse quickened. "Elena, that could cost you your position." "It will," she said simply. "But it won't cost me my integrity." He looked at her then, fully, deeply, seeing not the CEO he accidentally walked in on weeks ago, not the professional mask she wore daily, but the woman beneath, determined, principled, fighting against a system designed to break people like her and Marcus long before they ever rose. "What now?" he asked quietly. "Now," she said, "we wait for the auditor's response, and we prepare for pushback. From the board? From all directions." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of her courage settle into his chest like a spark igniting something fierce. "Elena," he said softly, "you didn't have to put yourself at risk for me." She stepped closer. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was right." "And for me?" he asked again, gentler. Her eyes softened. "And for you." Something shifted then, small but seismic. A moment suspended in the air. Two people standing on the edge of something they both felt but neither had dared to name. Elena reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "Marcus, I'm sorry they targeted you. I've been targeted my whole life," he murmured. "But this time, it didn't break me." "Because you weren't alone," she whispered, "and neither was I." Their hands steadied each other. Silence wrapped the room, not heavy, not tense, but warm, real. Then Marcus straightened. "We should get out of here. If Whitmore or Hamilton realize what we've done, they'll come after us," Elena finished. "I know." As they left the lab, Marcus felt a strange calm settle over him. Not safety. He wasn't safe yet. But clarity, purpose, a sense that he was stepping into truth rather than running from fear. Outside the building, 2 security vehicles blocked the front entrance. Reporters were beginning to gather. Something was happening. Elena frowned. "This is too fast." Marcus's phone buzzed. A notification from a financial news outlet. Breaking. Allegations of fraud surface against Harlow Innovations board leadership. The auditor had moved quickly, faster than either of them expected. Elena stared at the headline, then looked up at Marcus. "It's happening," she whispered. "The truth is coming out." Whitmore and Hamilton emerged from the building moments later, surrounded by reporters firing questions at them. Both wore identical expressions: shock, anger, disbelief that the fortress of power they built was crumbling in broad daylight. Marcus stood beside Elena as flashbulbs exploded and microphones swarmed. One reporter shouted, "Miss Harlow, did you initiate the investigation?" Elena lifted her chin. "I supported the right person doing the right thing." The reporter turned to Marcus. "Mr. Cole, were you threatened during your investigation?" Marcus held Elena's gaze for strength. Then he looked into the cameras, into the world. "Yes," he said, "but I didn't stop." A murmur rippled through the crowd: respect, curiosity, outrage at what he endured. Elena placed a hand gently on his back, a steadying touch. Not hidden, not secret, proud. When the reporters finally dispersed and the board members were escorted away for questioning, Elena and Marcus stood alone on the steps of Harlow Innovations, the city humming around them. "It's over," she whispered. "Not yet," Marcus replied, "but the hardest part is." She exhaled, closing her eyes for a brief moment of peace. When she opened them, she looked at him with something deeper than gratitude. "Marcus, thank you." "For what?" "For being the kind of man who doesn't run." He stepped closer, voice soft. "I almost did, but you didn't," she whispered. "And because of that, this company has a chance at redemption." They stood in silence a long moment, 2 fighters bruised but standing, bound by truth, courage, and something blossoming slowly between them. Marcus offered his hand. Elena took it without hesitation, and as they walked down the steps together, the weight of fear finally lifted. Only one truth remained. Love could grow even in the ruins of corruption, and justice, when fought for fiercely, could rewrite the story of 2 lives forever changed. In a world where power often protects the guilty and punishes the honest, courage becomes the quiet force that changes everything. Marcus's journey reminds us that standing up for truth is rarely safe, rarely simple, but always necessary. And Elena shows that integrity, even when it costs dearly, can light the way for others. Together, they prove that justice is not just a system, it is a choice, and love, when it rises against fear and prejudice, becomes the strongest truth of all.